Hey Adventurers, today is going to be our April wrap-up.
Yes.
These are the books that we read in April. We'll jump right in.
So I read The Alcatraz Rose by Anthony Eglin. This is a mystery following Lawrence Kingston. I think that it's kind of the same idea as Hercule Poirot or the Tommy and Tuppence of Agatha Christie. There's one detective, or any really detective book, and we kind of follow him along as he uncovers the mystery. I really liked this. A lot of times mystery books don't resonate with me, even though they were my favorite thing growing up. This one was really fun, and I would love to read more Anthony Eglin. It also switched between England and US, and being based in England, it was really interesting seeing the different way that the characters reacted to things, like for example guns, which is very different from the US. And I also read The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This was another book that I really enjoyed. I listened to it on audiobook and I thought it was very endearing. A lot of people say when you get to the end of the book you cry. And it didn't have that response for me, but I did like it, and it did cause me to stop and think just a little bit. The premise was very intriguing, and Neil Gaiman, I ended up listening to a little bit about what brought that story idea about for him and how that story came about, so that was also really interesting.
So the first book that I read or finished in the month of April was 20 Years After by Alexander Dumas. This is actually the second book or second part of the D'Artagnan romances. So I listened to this one on audiobook, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. It's very different from Three Musketeers in many ways, but at the same time it's very much the same. And I really enjoyed it. A lot of people, a lot of reviews and stuff that I've seen about it have said that it's very slow and almost boring, but it's not. It's very much a get the band back together and then go on this crazy adventure, and I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the difference and the ideologies that the characters have 20 years after they part ways in Three Musketeers. So it's just very interesting look at what would this world be like at this point in time, and I really enjoyed that.
So the next book I read was My Mother's Secret by J.L. Witterick. This is a really, really short fiction, and it had an interesting premise. It followed several different refugees during World War II who were hiding from the Nazis, and I loved the premise, but it felt like condensed and chopped up, and there was so much more that could have been brought out of it, so I didn't love the book. But what's interesting about it is there's an author's note at the back of the book where they actually mention when trying to get this published, the thing publishers kept telling them is, this is too short, it's not enough. And then they found one publisher who was like, this is exactly how you mean to tell the story. So it sounds like this is just not the story for me. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a bad book, but it really didn't resonate with me. I also read, I don't have it with me, The Woman with the Blue Star by Pam Jinoff. It's another World War II fiction about a girl living in the sewers under the city trying to hide from the Nazis. Once again, I loved the premise. I thought it was fantastic. The author's writing style, and she didn't have the same issue as J.L. Witterick. She didn't condense too much, but the writing style really turned me off. Something about it just did not work with me. It made me cringe. Some sentences I read a couple times, I'm like, did she just say that? Like, it wasn't wrong, it was just really strange, and I had a lot of that kind of impressions with the book, so I actually gave it to my sister because she thought she might like it, and it is a super intriguing premise, and I would love to read. There's a non-fiction written by someone in a situation, a survivor of the Holocaust who was in the same situation, who lived in the sewers, and I would love to read that. I think that's called The Girl in the Green Sweater, or maybe just, yeah, I think that's what it's called. So I'd love to read that one.
The next book that I finished was House of Suns by, who is this one by? Alastair Reynolds. This one is a science fiction book. I haven't read a whole lot of science fiction up to this point still, but I was mentioning in a Discord that I needed to read more science fiction, and Jonathan from Words in Time and then Liam from Liam's Lyceum were both like, oh, you should read House of Suns with, and so I was like, okay, if I have time I'll throw it on there and read it. And so I picked it up on audiobook because I was ready to take a break from Alexander Dumas for the moment, and so I picked up another audiobook, and that happened to be the next one on the list, and so I read it, really intriguing. I have a lot of thoughts that in fact I know I will go into more in a review that I don't think I have filmed yet, but I'll have a review for House of Sun sometime, where I'll go more into my thoughts. But overall I enjoyed it quite a bit. It wasn't like favorite book I've ever read type thing, but I enjoyed a lot of what was going on, a lot of the ideas presented in it.
So the next book I read was The Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell by Christopher Colfer. I really loved it. It's a middle grade about two siblings who fall into this fantasy book and fall into a fairy tale world. I actually remember when this came out when I was a kid and I saw it on the shelves at Barnes & Noble and I really wanted to get it, but we couldn't get it that month. And I never really saw it again until I saw it in the used bookstore. And I was like, oh wait, I want to read this still. I loved it. I thought it was great. I listened to it on audiobook and the narrator did an excellent job. I'm really excited to read more of the series. I think it would be interesting, and I don't think I've loved a middle grade this much in a while. I also read Blackout by Candace Owens, another fantastic book that was very enlightening, and I would recommend it to anyone who's interested. It's a nonfiction. I don't normally read nonfiction or talk about it, so I thought I'd specify.
The next book that I read was Activated by Nova McBee. This is the third book in the Calculated series. I actually got this on audiobook the day that it came out, because it just so happened that I needed an audiobook to read that day, and so I decided to pick this one up. I was very excited for it. I haven't been completely blown away with the actual books in the series, but the ideas and the premises and everything that's going on so far has been very intriguing to me and has made me really want to keep reading the series. And so there's enough in it that I've really liked and that I've really been intrigued by in this series that I've really wanted to continue reading it. And so as soon as I picked up book 3, I started reading it. Book 3 kind of fixed all the issues that I had with the first 2 books in terms of writing style or events, things that happened that didn't quite work for me, whatever it might have been. The little things that I didn't love about the first 2 books seem to have been fixed in this third book, and I really enjoyed the third book. I think that's all I'm going to say about that, because I should have a review for that coming out too. But also, I don't think I have a review for Calculated, which is the first book in the series, but I do have one for Simulated. It's an interesting series, and one that not as many people have read, because it's written by a Christian author, so it's a smaller fan base as it is, and so it's not as well known, but it's a very interesting one, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it if they would read it.
So I also read Rip Van Winkle by
Washington Irving?
Yes, by Washington Irving. I listened to the audiobook, and I was hesitant to read my copy because it's a really old edition, but I want to read my copy. Partly because I think I spaced out a little bit listening to the audiobook, so I missed a little bit, but also there's illustrations on almost every page that I would love to look at a little more in depth. It was such a short audiobook. I thought maybe I'd accidentally gotten an abridged version, but it wasn't. It said it was unabridged, so maybe this book just contains other things. But I did read Rip Van Winkle. No wrinkles.
I'm sure there might have been.
Well, probably.
He was laying there for a while.
Okay, and then I read The Catcher in the Rye by Jd Salinger. I really liked this. This is on the banned book list in certain schools because of the excess amount of language and the other topics it approaches. And there was a lot of language in that, I won't deny that. But I thought this was a fantastic book, and honestly there is contemporary novels with just as much or more language or worse language than in here. So that didn't really bother me in that sense. I thought it was a very interesting perspective on the way this person looked at life. The way this schoolboy, and I think that there's probably a lot of people who could relate to this. So, I don't know, I thought it was a fantastic book and I'm very glad I read it. Made me stop and think.
So, the first and only physical book that I finished in April, that's the month, is The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. I took way too long to read this, way longer than I should have and than it needed. I just was going real slow in my physical reading that month. Anyways, this is book 3 of the Wheel of Time. I guess what I'll say about this one is that I enjoyed it more than book 2, and I think I don't think I enjoyed it more than book 1. There were some things that I really enjoyed about it and that have been improving upon. I didn't seem to have any of the problem where the phrasing of certain phrases was like horrible and completely drew me out of this book trying to figure out what he was trying to say with them. There may have been a couple, but it wasn't nearly as bad in it as in previous books. we start seeing some things that Wheel of Time is known for that hadn't actually been in the first 2 books, and so I was like, why are people getting this? But then they're everywhere in book 3. I really enjoyed getting to see stuff from more POVs more stuff from more POVs than we had in the first 2 books. But the one POV that I wanted to actually see some stuff from wasn't there hardly at all. And for those of you who have read that, you know exactly what I mean. That's, I think, all I'm going to say about that until I review it.
So the next book I read was The Winter King by Christine Coden.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was a fantastic book. Very enjoyable, and it made me very... it brought out a lot of emotion from me, too, which is always good when a book does that. And then I read My Father's Son by Emily Murray. This is a self-published novel, and I'm acquainted with the author, so I wanted to read it, and I really liked it. A lot of self-published books are very disappointing. This one was not. I was impressed, and I was just overall very impressed with it. It was an endearing little story.
Alright, what's the last one that I've got? The last book on my list is Voice of War by Zach Argyle. This is a self-published book. It's from, I don't know exactly what they are, but I feel like it's won a bunch of awards, and I can understand why, because it was very, very well done. Magic system was super interesting. A lot of details and thought has gone into the world building, really everything about the story, and I really appreciated that. I can't say that it's the best book I've ever read, but I think that's just because it didn't quite resonate with me as much as it seems that there is in other, as it has with other people. But I really enjoyed it quite a bit, and I do want to continue on with the series. I also love the covers for this series. They're absolutely gorgeous, which there should be a picture somewhere, and you should be able to see that.
So I also read City of the Beasts by Isabelle Allende this month, and I loved it. I read Zorro by Isabelle Allende last fall, I think, and I thought her writing style was fantastic, and I was really eager to read more, but also interested because most of her books are translated from Spanish to English, and stuff can be lost in translation. I don't know if she does the translation herself or if someone else does, but they're fantastic. They're so good, so enjoyable to read. The plots are fantastic, but the prose are really, really beautiful. The things that she brings out in the stories, the relationships she focuses on, are so different from what we normally see. And it's just very refreshing to read a story with a great adventure story, which is what Zorro and City of the Beasts has been. A little bit of a man who learned better, more just following a character along as they grow is so much fun. So I would recommend Isabelle Allende to at least those 2 books. I thought they were fantastic. And I also read Lonesome Gods by Louis L'Amour. I was recommended this book, and it took me a while to get my hands on it, and I thought I owned it. I thought I bought it because I had this short story. I couldn't find it anywhere, and then I found this short story collection, and Lonesome Gods is in there. So I was thinking, this is the book I need to read. It's just a little short story. Boy, that'll be easy. And then I looked it up, and it's like, no, Lonesome Gods is the largest novel written by Louis L'Amour. And I was like, oh, okay, so I have the wrong book. So I found Lonesome Gods on audiobook, and I listened to it. And it got to the end, and I figured it out. There was, I think it was actually explained in like the afternote of the book or something, that Louis L'Amour based the novel Lonesome Gods off of a short story that he wrote, also titled Lonesome Gods, which apparently I have. So that was my Lonesome Gods adventure. I thought it was really good. It reminded me of Zorro and the way that we follow the main character from a boy up through adulthood. So that was really neat. I don't know, it was an enjoyable book. I guess I haven't disliked any of Louis L'Amour's I've read. Yeah. Not read a lot, but yeah. It was fun.
So those are the books that we read in the month of April. Let us know what you guys read, how your reading month went. I think this is a pretty decent month for both of us, even though mine was almost exclusively on audiobook. Yeah, thanks for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. We have our social medias linked in the description down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching. Stay warm.